Hello everyone, this is Giraffe. Today we are going to talk about the Antikythera Mechanism. One of the most unbelievable things ever discovered in the history of human archaeology, the Antikythera Mechanism. Antikythera is a Greek island located in the Mediterranean Sea, covering an area of 20 square kilometers, which is quite large, but with very few people living on it. According to statistics from 2001, the island had a total of only 44 residents. In the past, there used to be more people on the island. Because it lies along the migratory route of birds, many would stop there to rest during migration, attracting hunters who came to shoot birds. Also, in the water near the island, ships frequently passed through, which drew many pirates, like in One Piece. It's also far from Greece, so it was a place beyond the reach of the government. 120 years ago, in October 1900, Greek fishermen were diving near the island to catch lobsters and dig for shellfish when they discovered a shipwreck 45 meters below the surface. This shipwreck was located just 70 meters from the coast of Antikythera, very close. At the time of discovery, the ship was already in extremely poor condition, probably due to long passage of time. It had become mixed with sand and mud. After the fishermen reported the shipwreck to the authorities, the National Museum of Greece immediately sent people to the site. Sure enough, a large number of artifacts were found on the ship: statues, sculptures, pots, jars, and other items. A salvage excavation was quickly launched. Over the next 2 years also, everything from the ship was recovered. Alongside the salvage efforts, Greek archaeologists began their research. Then, in the second year, 1901, a famous Greek archaeologist, who also served as the director of the National Archaeological Museum, Valerius, noticed 3 particularly peculiar items along the many recovered artifacts. These 3 items. On them, he discovered engraved skills. This immediately sparked the interest of many archaeologists, because everything else recovered from the wreck had been works of art. This clearly wasn't a piece of art. It looked more like an industrial product. Later, after various instrumental analysis, it was determined that this object was made of bronze, and its age was estimated to be around the 1st to 3rd century BCE. That means it's about 2,100 to 2,300 years old, dating back to roughly the time when Qing Dynasty was established in China, when Qin Shi Huang unified the 6 kingdoms. It's from that era, and they already have bronze objects with skills back then. Exactly, isn't that strange? Further cleaning later revealed several gears inside. The discovery of these gears immediately shook the archaeological world. Before this mechanism was found, the earliest known metal gears were believed to have appeared in the 13th or 14th century. This, however, is from before the Common Era. Could the dating methods be inaccurate? It's not just one dating method. Various pieces of evidence all point to these objects being from the 2nd to 3rd century BCE. Gears might have existed before the Common Era, but they would have been large wooden ones, like those used in water wheels. Small metal gears were thought to be impossible. So initially, many believed this object wasn't part of the original shipwreck. The theory was that a ship carrying artworks sank first, and then, over 1,000 years later, another passing ship accidentally dropped a mechanical device at the same spot. It might have appeared to belong to the wreck, but was actually from a different period. However, it was later proven that this object truly was part of the wreck. So now it's accepted that the earliest known gears, and they appear as metal gears right from the start, are over 2,000 years ago. The question then comes, how could people wielding rough bronze swords have created something like this? And what was the thing even for? The mystery deepened. But over 100 years ago, without advanced imaging technology, the eternal structure of the mechanism remains unknown. Initially, only 3 fragments were found, likely representing a small fraction of the whole. To figure out what it was, the only approach at the time was to search for more fragments and piece them together. So, for decades afterward, many archaeologists dove in the area hoping to find additional pieces. Unfortunately, over the past century, only 3 more fragments have been found, bringing the total to 6. These later fragments were very small, and it was unclear where they fit or what significant information they added. Along all the archaeologists searching for fragments, one person's finding played a crucial role in identifying the shape and the mechanism. That person was the famous French marine archaeologist, Jacques Cousteau. He was also the inventor of the scuba diving apparatus. He was an archaeologist and an adventurer. Without his invention, long-duration underwater exploration wouldn't have been possible. In 1966, over 70 years after the wreck's initial discovery, Cousteau dove to the set. He found many wine amphorae and also parts of the ship's hull. From this, he determined it was a galley, a ship rowed by many oarsmen, like those seen in Pirates of the Caribbean. Such ships at the time had 2 primary functions. One was as a warship, akin to a modern naval vessel, and the other was as a merchant vessel, a trading ship. If it was a merchant ship, it would have been among the largest of its time, comparable to a massive container ship today. Besides this, he also found some coins. These coins helped date the ship. Back then, many small European states minted their own coins, but these states were often short-lived. So, the coins could provide a fairly accurate time frame for the ship. And since coins from various states were found, they also helped infer the ship's likely route. Combining all the evidence, it was concluded that the ship was a Roman vessel, a merchant ship of the largest class. After stopping at various ports in Turkey and Greece, it had been loaded with a collection of exquisite artworks. These artworks might have been acquired through trade, or they could have been plundered. The mix of coins from different states suggested the latter. It seemed less likely buying a bit here and there, and more like gathering loot. A pirate ship? Not a pirate ship. It was too large. This was on a state level. After Rome conquered those regions, it collected the finest goods from those areas and shipped them back to Rome. On its return journey to Rome, the ship passed by the island of Antikythera and, caught in a storm, sank nearby. Its precious cargo lay on the seabed for 2,000 years. So, the gear mechanism wasn't Roman, it was plundered by them. But such an advanced mechanism from such a smaller state? Exactly. How did they come to possess such a thing, right? What this object really was became the central question, and it took decades to figure it out. It was a technological advancement in science that finally began to unveil its secrets. That technology is called X-ray computed tomography. In short, CT scanning. Using CT scanning for the first time, they could say what the inside of this thing looked like. The scan revealed a dense mass of gears, packed tightly together, one next to the other. Within this object, just a few centimeters thick, layer upon layer was filled with gears. Because the early imaging technology only allowed for vertical perspective, the gears were stacked on top of each other, making it impossible to know the total count at first. It took several years of analysis to determine that there were 27 gears within the recovered fragments. Those are from the 3 fragments, yes, and they're all filled with gears, all gears. Since this is only a partial remnant, it's estimated that the complete structure originally contained at least 70 gears. Seeing such a complex gear system, archaeologists largely agreed that this object was what we would call a mechanical computer. The computers we use today are electronic computers. Before electronic computers existed, there were mechanical computers. These were highly intricate mechanical systems designed to perform specific calculations, though what those calculations were remained unclear. Thus, the Antikythera Mechanism is often referred to as the world's earliest known computer. The earliest known complex mechanical devices in human history appeared in 14th century Europe, the first mechanical clocks. But the complexity of 14th century clocks doesn't compare to this mechanism, and the earliest known mechanical computer previously recognized was invented in the 17th century by the French mathematician Blaise Pascal, and it could only perform addition and subtraction. So, the craftsmanship of the Antikythera mechanism is roughly equivalent to 18th century technology. It predates what we thought was the emergence of such complex engineering by a full 2,000 years. In archaeology, there is a specific term for something like this: an out-of-place artifact, an object that appears in a time period where it shouldn't exist, like something out of a time travel story. Exactly, like time travel. Think about it. What does a 2,000-year gap represent? It would be like digging a fighter jet out of a pharaoh's tomb. Alright, so what was this thing actually used to calculate? It took archaeologists a long time to figure that out. And they did figure that out? Yes, they did. It's an astronomical computer used to calculate celestial movements. That's incredible. It was used to calculate the motions of celestial bodies, essentially tracking the cycles of the sun, moon, and planets. How did they figure this out? Through the tooth counts on the gears. They discovered a relatively complete gear on the front with 127 teeth, and on the back of this gear, an inscription, the number 235. To most of us, the number 235 doesn't mean much, but to archaeologists, it was a key signal. This number appears frequently in ancient Greek astronomical and religious texts. The ancient Greeks used the moon to determine time, months, seasons, and years. The moon waxes and wanes in a cycle. In fact, this cycle of lunar phases represents the relative positions of the Earth, the Moon, and the Sun. The ancient Greeks considered one complete cycle of the moon phases to be a month. In modern astronomy, we call this a synodic month, which lasts about 29.5 days. 12 such months make a lunar year of 354 days, about 11 days shorter than a solar year. Because of this 11-day discrepancy, they needed to add intercalary month to reconcile the difference. how did they determine when to add this month? Through long-term observation, the ancient Greeks discovered that 235 synodic months equal 19 solar years. In other words, adding 7 extra months every 19 years aligns the lunar and solar calendars. And there it is, the number 235 appears, which means 19 years equals 235 synodic months. The scale on the back of the mechanism has 235 divisions, representing exactly 235 synodic months. That means when this gear completes one full rotation, it marks one complete cycle of the Sun, Earth, and the Moon, a 19-year period. But that's not the only lunar cycle that the ancient Greeks understood. There's also the time it takes for the Moon to return to the same position in the sky relative to the background stars. This isn't a synodic month, it's called a sidereal month, which lasts about 27.3 days, and 19 solar years correspond almost exactly to 254 sidereal months. So, where does the number 254 show up in the mechanism? Remember that gear with 127 teeth I mentioned earlier? 127 is exactly half of 254. Archaeologists suspect that making a gear with 254 teeth might have been impractical, so they made one with 127 teeth and used it in combination with another gear to achieve the equivalent of a 254 tooth count, representing the sidereal month cycle. So this gear with 127 teeth and a scale of 235 divisions on the back was designed to simulate the positions of the Sun, Earth, and the Moon over the 19-year cycle. Besides this gear, there's another, larger gear on the back of the mechanism, but most of it is missing, so the exact number of teeth is unknown. Based on the curvature of the remaining fragment and the tooth spacing, it's estimated to have had between 220 and 225 teeth. Later, after careful cleaning, a faint inscription was found near this gear, originally illegible, but eventually it became clear, the number 223. So it likely had 223 teeth. But what does 223 represent? This number doesn't appear in ancient Greek texts. Instead, it was found on Sumerian clay tablets. On Sumerian astronomical tablets, it's recorded that 223 months from exactly one cycle of total solar eclipses. So, this largest gear was used to predict solar eclipses, the smaller gears for lunar eclipses. The Sumerian tablets themselves are also out-of-place artifacts, aren't they? The whole Sumerian civilization kind of is an out-of-place artifact. What this reveals is that the person who built this machine wasn't just familiar with Greek astronomy, they also understand Sumerian astronomy. Later, inscriptions indicating timing and even color were found on the gears. This means the device couldn't just predict when an eclipse would occur, but roughly what time it would happen, down to the hour. Eclipses are brief, and it seems they knew within minutes when they would start. It even predicted what color the moon would appear during the eclipses. You know how sometimes the moon looks huge and reddish, other times it doesn't. That follows patterns, and apparently they understood those too. But here's something even more incredible. Inside the mechanism, they found a gear with 53 teeth. A 53-tooth gear might not sound that complex, but its function was remarkable. We now know that the Moon's orbit around Earth isn't a perfect circle, it's an ellipse, and that elliptical orbit itself slowly shifts over time, completing a full cycle roughly every 9 years. In other words, it takes 9 years for the Moon to return to exactly the same position and orientation relative to Earth. So, if this mechanism was going to accurately model the Moon's motion, it had to account for that orbital precession, and that 53-tooth gear, its job was to correct for that shift, to model the ellipse and its gradual rotation. The precision of this correction, accurate to 9 decimal places. Later, they noticed something else. On one of the front gears, there was a slot. Inside the slot, a small circular object. For a long time, no one knew what it was for. Then, using 3D scanning technology, they created a digital model of the entire mechanism, fabricated replica parts, and assembled a working version. When they turned the crank, they saw something amazing. That little circular piece inside the slot moved. As the gear rotated, it slid back and forth in the slot, sometimes closer to the center, sometimes farther away. That little piece represented the Moon and its motion, sliding nearer and farther as the gear turned, perfectly mimicked the Moon's elliptical orbit around Earth. It was an exact mechanical analog of how the Moon actually moves in the sky. That's insane. Now we can fly to the space, and you can see how the Earth and the Moon move like this. They figured it out just by observing from Earth. So overall, this is an ultra-precise astronomical computer, not just a model. In fact, it's a complete reproduction of the solar system. It's speculated that there was originally a panel in front of this structure, and these mechanisms were hidden behind it. When they moved, several celestial bodies on the panel would also move accordingly. Later, when further studying its structure, another issue emerged. That is, the numbers I just mentioned, 53, 127, 235, 223, including the previously mentioned 90 years and 235 scales, are actually all prime numbers. This indicates that this is an extremely rigorous, highly optimized system that can no longer be improved. Moreover, all gear teeth are odd numbers, which fully demonstrates just how difficult this object was to manufacture. Making gears with an even number of teeth is relatively easy. Circles are simple to divide equally into 2, 4, 6, and 8 parts. You can just place teeth along the diagonal, making symmetry easy. But making gears with an odd number of teeth, that's tough, especially making 223 odd teeth, where each tooth has to be slightly offset, just a tiny bit, to accommodate one extra tooth to achieve an odd number. That's incredibly difficult, hard to do by hand, hard even today, let alone in the Bronze Age, right? Alright, here's another question. Over 2,000 years ago, why would people need such a precise knowledge of celestial motion? What were they trying to do? Were they planning to go to the moon or something? Right now, there are two main theories. One is that ancient people truly relied on the heavens for their livelihood. If they had a machine that could predict celestial movements so accurately, it would have been a huge help for agriculture and many other activities. If they had that kind of brain power, they would definitely have food on the table. Either way, it would have been a massive help. Another very practical use is that this machine could accurately predict solar and lunar eclipses. That was extremely important for ancient rulers. For example, if a king knew when an eclipse was coming, he could hold rituals. The people would think, wow, he really is the son of heaven. He even knows when eclipses happen. Impressive, right? The importance is obvious, but the real question is, how did they make it? How did they even know? Exactly, that's an even bigger question. Who designed this thing? How did they know so much about astronomy, mathematics, and physics? Actually, there are some guesses about who built it and who designed it. The current mainstream hypothesis is that the Antikythera mechanism came from what was then Rhodes. Rhodes is also a small island in the Aegean Sea. The legend has it that this island was once home to a surreal, almost otherworldly civilization. Historical records say that on this island, there once stood a massive sun god statue, the topic we just covered earlier. It was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, but now only the pyramid is left of the 7 wonders. This one has gone. For the longest time, people thought it was just a legend, but later on, they actually found evidence that this thing really existed. This bronze statue was first built in 292 BC and stood 30 meters tall. It was the largest bronze statue in the world at the time. It took 12 years to build and was completed in 280 BC. It stood firm for 54 years. Then, in 226 BC, a massive earthquake hit that part of ancient Greece, and the statue fell. This also shows that the 7 wonders really did exist. It can't be that only the pyramid was real and the rest was fake. It can't all be a coincidence. Now, the famous ancient Greek poet Pindar once visited this island of Rhodes. Pindar lived around 500 BC, and he said that all over Rhodes there were statues that could move just like living people. He said Rhodes had this surreal, almost supernatural technology. They could make robots. If the people of Rhodes really did make robots, then they probably used that same technology to build this thing. So the timeline roughly matches up too. Their robots didn't use electricity, right? All mechanical. Right, purely mechanical. Pindar had no idea why these things could move, why they could walk. He just found it absolutely astonishing, so he wrote it down. But later, the island was destroyed by an earthquake, kind of like how Atlantis vanished. Okay, this is just a hypothesis, though. The idea that they had robots back then is still pretty strange. It's only recorded in books. We can't take it completely as fact. So, could this thing have been made by the people of Rhodes? We don't know for sure. We don't even really know who the Rhodians were. It's just recorded in books that they had advanced technology. Compared to the manufacturing though, the design was probably even harder. Who actually designed this thing? This person had to have knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, geometry, and physics. Basically, they had to know everything. Eventually, they found a clue. They figured out who designed it. More text was discovered on the gears. As they slowly cleaned it and it became clearer, they found several words naming the moon, terms that the ancient Corinthians used for the moon. Corinth is an incredibly ancient city-state. It's said to have existed as far back as 8,000 years ago, even older than the Sumerian civilization. It was a city built by a son of Zeus. This son of Zeus was called Corinthos, and the city he built was named Corinth. It was once extremely powerful, as famous as Athens, until it was eventually destroyed by enemies. And among the descendants of the Corinthians, there was a very famous person who lived near this sea, the renowned mathematician, physicist, astronomer, and inventor Archimedes. Archimedes was born in 287 BC. The timeline roughly matches, right? And the city where Archimedes lived at the time was called Syracuse. Syracuse is now in Italy. This city, Syracuse, was founded by the descendants of the Corinthians. So he was a descendant of the Corinthians. But in Archimedes' era, it had been colonized by ancient Greece and was part of the Greek world. So Archimedes is known as an ancient Greek astronomer, physicist, and inventor. According to historical records, Archimedes once used water power to build a large astronomical computer that could accurately predict solar and lunar eclipses, as well as the movements of the 5 known planets. However, that machine of his was very large and water-powered. So, how did Archimedes die? Legend has it that later, when the ancient Romans attacked Syracuse, Archimedes was inside the city and invented all sorts of devices to defend against the Roman assault. This included catapults, machines that launched javelins, and even cranes. You see, Syracuse was incredibly easy to defend and hard to attack. The land routes were extremely narrow, making a land invasion nearly impossible. The Romans had to attack by sea, so he invented cranes that could lift Roman ships right out of the water, smash them down onto the rocks, lift them again, and smash them again. Like a claw machine. He just kept inventing inside the city, and the Romans kept attacking for years. But they couldn't break through. Because of this, Archimedes was called the 100-handed giant in his time. The Roman general Marcellus, who was in charge of the siege of Syracuse, even said, "This war is really just between the Roman army and one man, Archimedes. As long as he was there, they couldn't break in." Finally, out of options, Marcellus came up with a plan. He surrounded Syracuse. Syracuse was on an island. He blockaded it, cutting off their water and food supplies. Syracuse couldn't hold out any longer, and the Romans broke in. That general still have some integrities, right? Actually, he should have thought of that earlier, but he wanted to storm in. After the Romans entered the city, Archimedes was still at home studying his geometry. The accounts of what happened next vary. Some say the soldier ordered Archimedes to come with him to see the general. Archimedes refused, and the soldier killed him. Another version says the soldier didn't even know it was Archimedes. He just saw some old man and killed him on the spot. Probably didn't know, right? And Archimedes' last words recorded in history were, "Don't disturb my circles." And then he was killed. Later, an even more direct piece of evidence emerged. There was a very famous Roman statesman, orator, and rhetorician named Cicero around 54 BC. He wrote a book called De Republica on the Commonwealth. It's written in dialogue form, almost like a novel. The entire book is fictional, and within this fictional dialogue, it mentions that the Romans killed Archimedes and seized 2 machines capable of calculating celestial movements, along with the original design manuscripts for the device. The general who seized these 2 machines, Marcellus, kept one for himself and sent the other to Rome. where it was supposedly placed in some Roman collection. Exactly where, no one knows. Anyway, he had one himself, and Cicero himself had seen the one in Marcellus' possession. So he knew this thing could calculate celestial movements, but since his book De Republica was a fictional dialogue, historians and archaeologists always thought the story was made up, something he imagined, not real. That is, until 1901, when the Antikythera Mechanism was discovered. Only then did people realize that what he wrote in his book was actually true. If it's true, then there were two of these devices. Which one was on this shipwreck? No one knows. Probably the one that was being sent to Rome and it sank. So where's the other one? Where are the blueprints? No idea. Without the blueprints, it's impossible to recreate this thing. Actually, this might also explain why this technology wasn't passed down. Archimedes was killed, and for the next 15,000 years, there was no other Archimedes, and no more people from Rhodes emerged. So this thing just disappeared, and we had to figure it all out again from scratch. It's possible. Now, this machine is kept at the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, and ordinary people can visit it, but what you see on display are replicas, not the real thing, because the real one is said to be worth far more than the Mona Lisa. Today, archaeologists say the greatest significance of this device is that it completely changed our view of ancient people. Ancient people might have nothing like we imagine, nothing like our assumptions at all. What's your opinion about the Antikythera? Leave your thoughts to the comments. See you next time.